So many of the images and logos you associate with WSFA 12 News started as an idea by our former art director, Bill Ford. He's responsible for creating so many of the designs that represent the station and all that it provides. He worked here for nearly 3 decades, shaping the station's look around the community while shaping the culture inside the building. Its magnetic personality is sure to draw you into this conversation, just as it has for us for so many years, making us laugh and think and helping us see the world a little better. I'm Bethany Davis, and this is Being Real.
Sponsored by Bryan Jewelry.
But when you call me, I'll answer. And if you need someone to hold your hand, when you're lonely, I'll be there. I will give you everything I am.
Promise your everything with a diamond from Bryan Jewelry.
Well, we decided to pull you into the break room of our new building because in our old building where you spent your career with us, you always seemed to, as Jeff Harrison put it, hold court.
Oh, really?
In the break room. It seemed like there was always a crowd with you. You were always just...
Well, I never thought of it that way. I thought the crowd was there all the time.
No, it was you. I describe you to everyone I know. I describe Bill Ford is the coolest guy that I know. I don't think there's anybody cooler. And you just have this presence about you. So I do. We were just talking as we were preparing for this interview.
That's amazing. That's blowing me away.
Well, you should have already known this.
I had no idea. I didn't. I loved our break room though. It was a
gathering place.
Yeah, I have some break room stories. Now, you know, my office, I was aware that in my office I kind of had my ambiance there with my track lighting and my art on the wall and in my environment, but not the break room. I thought the break room was everybody's kind of hangout area, and so to speak. So when I went in there, I didn't think it was me drawing people. I just thought it was just a natural state of the break room. It was so cool.
It was a cool little spot, and it was a kind of a gathering. You know, kind of the location of it was easy for people to just come in and gather. But it always seemed when you were there, when you fixed your fancy meals and sat down to eat, that's when everybody just stopped and stayed for a little while.
Wow,
I think everybody just wanted to be.
I'm blown away by that. You should have warned me, because you know I'm an artist. I'll start crying in a minute. So sensitive, but that's cool. I you know, my time at WSFA, I loved that station. I mean, and I've been lucky in that my life has been a series of stops where I went and found a family, you know, because that's where it was St. Jude. Went there first grade, and my favorite story from St. Jude's first day of class, the nun calls a roll, and she says, William Ford, and I looked around and said, somebody's got the same last name I got.
You didn't know that was
I didn't
your
know
first
William
name?
was my first name. Everybody called me Billy. My parents never told me my name was William, so I'm looking, somebody's got the same last name I got. And she said, you're William. And I said, no, I'm Billy. Because I loved my name because of Billy the Kid and Wild Bill Hitchcock, and my dad was Bill and I was Billy. Nobody even called him William. So I didn't have a clue. And it was, I tell people, it was to my classmates' credit that they didn't from that moment think I was a special kid who didn't know his own name. You know, they could have gone, okay, this dude is really slow, he don't know his own name. But I being an artist and being a little bit different, they embraced me, and it was my family, and I loved it. And I was there for 12 years. And then I went out into the world and bumped around a little bit for a decade or so, and then I managed to end up at WSFA, and I found another family. And it was just, I tell people that all the time now. With all the things I do, I say I learned how to interact and communicate with people of so many different stripes and ilks at WSFA. And it was just so obvious to me that, because we were all different. Yeah. You know, I couldn't have been more different from somebody like Ralph Pope. But you know, we hung out together and we laughed and we were friends and we communicated and I always I think at one time in the station I even said that I said we all come from different places and we got different ideologies and stuff, but we come together because we know the product that we're producing is so important, and we come together to produce an exemplary product, and everybody understands that, and we work together to do that because the cause is important. We feel strongly about it, and it's still with me now. What I can't be anywhere in this city and see a WSFA vehicle without thinking us. You know, it's like, there we go.
Yes.
That's me. You know, that's my family. So it was home to me, and I hated to go. I cried when I had to leave St. Jude, and I felt bad when I had to leave WSFA, and I didn't really want to go, but I felt like it was time. After 30 years, I was like, okay, I'm getting up there, and if there anything else I want to do, I need to get out here and do it now. And you know, losing Arlen was hit me especially hard. And when he came and told me about his illness and everything, and I was like, wow. You know, life expectancy for black men in America is 69 years old. And I had less than a decade to go before I'd hit that. So I was like, yeah, I gotta, you know, jump out of the nest, so to speak, and get out here and do some other things. And so, but it has served me well. I love my time at WSFA.
Well, we're going to come back to some of those things that you already mentioned, but let's talk a little bit about what you did. You are our art director for 30 years?
Pretty much.
Wow.
22. I was before that. I started as a studio technician, running teleprompter and stuff like that. And then I started doing what they called graphics, which is just typing name supers. But then when Bill Weldon left, who was the art director before me, I had a degree in art. And I remember Carl Stevens telling me of all the people who applied, I was the only one who had a television technical background and an art background. So that kind of made me the ideal choice. And so that kind of slipped me in there, and for the next, and I loved it. I used to tell people, don't tell anybody, but I'd be here doing this for free. They wouldn't even have to pay me. I'd be coming in here every day, because to me it was like playing.
Well, I don't know what they paid you, but I don't think it was enough to compensate for the talent that you brought.
I just, you know, as an artist, you know, I went to school with a lot of guys who are artists, and that's a tricky field. I often tell people that I kind of regret that my dad was an artist, because I just always wanted to be like him. Huh. But shoot, I could have been a lawyer or some other stuff and made a lot more money. You know, because artists, even at you know, the museum, I say that this is my temple. This being out here at this museum now, it's a temple, because it's a place where art is revered.
Yes.
And as an artist, I love it, and you know, it's like I'm an humble monk in a temple, you know, and it's not about money. It's about passion and a desire and a love for what you do. Because they say if you're doing something that you love doing, I never got up and went, oh, I gotta go to work. It was always, okay, let me get in there and see what's gonna be new today. Yeah. Some new challenge, something that somebody's gonna bring in there and do. Now there was some people whose names I won't mention who caused me a little bit of consternation, but even those people always presented me with challenges that I knew I had to overcome and make them happy. So it's just I loved being at WSFA as the art. I used to answer the phone, art department, and then I hang up and go, that's just
it's
me.
Just
I
am
am
I'm
a one-man department. But you know, I loved it. I really loved it.
So your hand, your touch is on so many of the images that a lot of us have seen over the years that are related to Channel 12. Talk a little bit about some of your favorite projects, how they came together and turned out.
One thing that it is so simple that I see all the time now is County Road 12.
Yes.
That was just, and you know, it's just when they said we're gonna do this County Road 12, we gotta get a county road sign. Sometimes the simplest things are the ones that make more sense, and they become iconic because they're simple and they're easy to understand. So when I see that, even though I started out, it was a much more cartoony looking kind of logo, that and Friday Night Football Fever, things like that. You know, one of my favorite things that I started doing was once the engineers got their first plotter, which, you know, when I became the art director, before that we had a print shop, and there was a guy who had been, his name was Bernard. He ran the print shop, and he had been there for like 40 years, seems like, and he printed everything around the station. He had a typesetting machine, and he printed publications and things like that, and he died. And so I went to management and I said, listen, if y'all get me a desktop computer, everything he's doing in the print shop, I can do it. Because until then, the art department just had a T-square and a triangle, because you did art the old-fashioned way. And so they said, okay, and because I had gone to Bill Weldon once, and we had started talking about computer graphics, and he said, well, that's not art, anybody can use a computer. And I said, well, yeah. I said, anybody can use a computer, but I said, the synthesizer is a computer. But you see what happened when you gave a synthesizer to Stevie Wonder?
Right.
I mean, he's a musician, so anybody can play a synthesizer, but you give a synthesizer to a musician, and I felt like that with the computer. You know, we had a paint box, and Harold Ezell used to, in the edit suite, he used to always do the paint box, and he was the paint box guy. And so when I came in, I would see him doing stuff, and I would be thinking to myself, well, I could give that a spin, an artistic spin that it needs to really take it to the next level. And he would reluctantly let me do some stuff. And then one day when I walked into the edit suite, he said, you sit over there. And 'cause he turned it over to me, I was like, yeah, I'm in now.
Wow.
Because you know, he finally
He did not
understood.
turn that seat over to just anybody, by
No,
the way.
not
That was
not
his
the
seat.
paint box seat. Well, he stayed in the director's seat, but he used to go from director's seat to the paint box, director's seat to the paint box, because the paint box was a precursor to desktop graphics. It was a dedicated computer for television graphics. So it cost like $250,000 when we bought our first paint box. It was like $240,000.
Goodness gracious.
So it was state of the art, but that's all it did. It just produced graphics for television. So and what I did while I was waiting to, I had left the station. I moved to Mississippi to get married and got cold feet. Didn't do it. Came back. And while I was waiting I had applied for the job as art director at the station. I used to go out to Dan Black's place because I knew he was the only other place in town that had a paint box. And I volunteered out there. I just went out there every day and just said, hey, let me just learn how to use your paint box. And I did. So when I got to WSFA, when I finally got the job, I already knew how to use a paint box. And so eventually I walked in one morning, Harold said, sit over there, and I was like, okay, I'm in now.
Yes.
But then when the software came out where you could have a desktop computer, they were much cheaper. The software was, you could Illustrator, Adobe Photoshop, even After Effects and things of that nature. Software became more adaptable. I started that, and that to me it is something that I was really proud of until I got that first desktop computer. The only other computers they had in the station, desktop computers that weren't dedicated to television production, were ones they used in accounting for doing spreadsheets and stuff for traffic.
Right.
And so I got this computer, and all the other computers were, I think, NEC computers. But I had done studying it, and I wanted a Dell computer because Dell was at the forefront then. And so I wrote the proposal and sent it, and they had to give the special permission to buy a Dell computer because they had and so it had to be cleared at the home office. And because of that, I was the first person to get a Dell computer from Dell. So for the next 10 years, I'm sure at least the next 10 years, whenever they sent an invoice to WSFA, even after they started buying Dell computers for other applications, it had my name on the invoice because their first account had my name on it. And the chief engineer used to bring it, Bill, you owe this money. You owe this money. But it was just a fantastic way for me. And I was just telling some people the other day, as an artist, You know, that's what artists do. We take tools that are available to you and learn how to make things and you know, use your skills. And you know, from the first primitive, the first the first airbrush was a hollowed out reed. That,
Yeah.
you know, the primitive man would hollow out reed and mix ink and stuff and put their handprints and blow through it, so you can still see that images in caves from when the first men were doing that. That was just a way to express themselves. And so that's what I look at those tools as, just another form of expression, you know. So, because even when I was at the station, people would say, "Are you still doing art?" And I say, "Yeah, every day.
Yeah.
I go to work every day. I don't have to be painting because this is my way of expressing my artistic sensibilities. So I'm happy doing this."
But when you call me, I'll answer. And if you need someone to hold your hand, and when you're lonely, I'll be there. I will give you everything I have.
Promise your everything with a diamond from Brian Jewelry.
I say this a lot about working in TV. It's one of those things, you either have it or you don't. You either love it or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
If you catch the bug, the TV
Oh,
bug,
oh.
you
There's
can't
nothing
shake
like
it.
it. There's nothing
There's
like it.
nothing like it.
You know, it amazes me, even when it comes to deadlines. You know, in most industries and people, they're always, deadline.
Yes.
We got a deadline every day, dude.
Oh, all the time.
And we're working right up to the minute. And you have to stay cool and calm and focused to make sure you get it. There were so many times I know that, you know, they were editing that tape and pop it in right after the break. You know, you just bam. And people at home don't know.
They have no
we
clue.
just finished that. You know, and I used to do it in graphics. You know, you sitting there putting in graphics for something, because at first I used to have to put in the weatherman's graphics.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when I first started working there, we had to put in the weatherman's graphics. We had to put in all the information that they put on the
Yes.
screen. We had to type that. The character generator guy had to do that. So they'd come in the break between before weather, and I'm sitting there typing the weatherman stuff, to make sure he got it. When he gets out there, he's going to be able to present it.
Thank goodness you were a good typist.
Yeah, so, well, that was always my thing, too. I wasn't the fastest typist, but I seldom made mistakes. So that was always my thing. I didn't have to go back and correct stuff, because
Yes.
I was pretty deliberate in typing it right the first time. So I had very few errors.
Which is, yes,
Yeah.
which is quicker if you do
Yeah,
it the
right,
right, the right
exactly.
time.
Exactly, but, you know, it even, you know, like I said, even now, I find that I'm usually the person who's coolest under pressure.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, we got to get this stuff done. Well, okay, it ain't here yet. As long as it's not here, I got time. I still got time, and I'm working, you know, swiftly and smartly and competently to make sure that when it finally is time for it to be seen, it's right. And it serves me well.
I call that professional procrastinism.
Well,
we
you
are
have to.
professional procrastinators,
Because
Bill.
you-
That's
you-
what we are.
Because you have to. You got, it's up to the minute. You never know. Stuff changes. You
That's
know?
true.
You
That's true.
Got to be prepared.
So why do more work?
Right,
Yeah,
right,
just
right.
wait until the
You
last
wait.
minute and get it all done at the end.
Now, that's an interesting way to look at it. It's an interesting way to look at it.
I love your, okay, so let's go back to your description of a logo and how a logo has to have a little bit of mystique. I think that's such a really great metaphor, honestly, for the way you treat people.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have such a gift, which is, again, why people always seem to want to be in your presence. But you have such a gift of peeling back the layers of people. The way you get to know people, the way you sit down and talk with people, with everybody. You treat everybody the same way.
That's important. It's important to me.
is.
And you know, and I even get a little. Sometimes I get a little miffed with people who want that same kind of consideration and treat me as a person, not a group. I'm different. So treat me. I was talking to a good friend of mine yesterday who's an artist, young artist, and we have conversations all the time. He was telling me, I put everybody in categories. You know, I meet people, I put them in categories, and I say, well, I do the opposite. Everybody, I put them in the category of one. When I meet you, you're in this category because you are that person.
Yeah.
And I'm going to accept you and deal with you as an individual, and good and bad. You know, that one of my favorite Chinese proverbs I try to tell us as quickly as possible is this old woman who has to walk like 4 miles every day to the well, and she's carrying 2 earthen pots on a yoke on her shoulders. And she's doing this for years. And so one day she's walking back, and one of the pots started talking to her, as they do in Proverbs, and says, I have to make an apology to you. And she said, for what? He said, I'm flawed. I have a crack. And because of the crack, by the time you get home, you're only I'm only 2/3 full. So I'm not fulfilling my purpose. And she said, well, what you don't notice is that on the way back, I always walk with you to the side of the road. And you water the road and the plants along my way back, and you beautify my path home. So she said, so even though you're cracked, you still have a purpose. And we're all cracked pots. Nobody's perfect. And the bottom line in the proverb is, if you don't have any friends who are crackpots, then you are probably the crackpot for everybody else, you know.
Or you just haven't found the crack yet.
Yeah, you just haven't found the crack yet. But yeah, I treat everybody as an individual, because my dad always taught me that. He said, don't ever assume to know a person just by looking at them. Yeah. Because frankly, I mean, there are enough examples throughout nature that some things that are very beautiful are extremely dangerous, like snakes.
True.
Some snakes are extremely compelling and beautiful, but you don't want to get bit by one.
No.
And so they can be beautiful, and so just because somebody looks palatable and perfect and pleasant doesn't mean they are. And conversely, some people who might not be that appealing to you visually are very wonderful people.
But I think that trait of yours is probably what led to you having such close relationships with so many different people. I mean, you mentioned Ralph Pope. You two could be no different, no more different than you are.
Right.
But it wasn't just, you know, it was literally everybody. You became close friends with such a wide range of people who worked here, because you were the one that pretty much anybody could sit down and talk to.
Well, I've been told, actually, you know, it's interesting, because you know, at St. Jude, we were all one big happy group. And so my best friend was quarterback on the football team. Another best friend was the egghead who went off and became a chemist. So we had a whole bunch of disparate people. And so it was just natural to me. And then at WSFA, yes, certainly there was some different people, but I thought that's what happens when you come into an environment where there are different people. But since I've left WSFA, I do a lot of volunteer work now, and to my chagrin or to my astonishment, I'll join an organization, and in a couple of years, I'm the president. Well, how did that happen? I don't want to be the president, but everybody would say, but Bill, your people gravitate towards you.
They do. So as we celebrate this big anniversary at Channel 12, 70th anniversary, what comes to mind when you think about the station? Either what it means to you, or what it means to this community, or maybe even what it means to the country?
You know, the pride that comes from having worked here and understanding how important WSFA is in the landscape of television stations across the country. That's one thing, and that's understandable. But for me, it's always been the people. Yeah. It's always been the people. I made so many close and dear friends here that I think of them all fondly, and people I love. I just losing Lou Daly, Lou Morrison was just such a, you know, and Bob, and you know, losing people like that is so disturbing. But that's what was important to me. It was the bond, that family unit that you knew when you got to work. That there might be somebody that you might not have ever formed a friendship or a relationship with this person, because you just look at him and think, well, that person's different from me, so I'm not interested. But it's the people that I remember the most, and that's what's so important to me. This was family. WSFA was family for me.
Well, I think you are a huge part of creating the atmosphere and keeping the atmosphere, the family atmosphere that creates that bond. It is a close-knit place to work, and
Yeah.
I think you hold a little bit of responsibility.
Well, thank
for
you. I think you might be overstating my importance in that regard, because you know, I think about guys and ladies that I became friends with here, and everybody, just like my school. I always was, you know, as an artist, I run into other artists and I listen to their stories, and I hear them say things like Charlie Lucas, the artist, the self-taught artist. He and I were doing a thing during COVID via Zoom, and he was telling his story, and it was so different from mine, you know, because he grew up in a family that didn't have any kind of notion of what being an artist was about. They tried to dissuade him from being an artist. He was discouraged, and but my experience was the complete opposite. My dad was an artist, so it was never something that anybody made me think was an unusual desire or a weird occupation, or even because artists, we tend to, like I said, you know, one of my instructors at Bama State used to say, you know, you ought to be able to look at a guy and tell he's an artist. You know, he said, you know, you look at Picasso, you know, he's Andy Warhol with his wig, and Salvador Dali with his mustache, and you know, artists just, we march to the beat of a different drummer. So it was always so gratifying to me that people never made me feel odd, even though now I realize I'm a very odd bird. I really am. I really am a very odd bird. My lady friend, she always tells me, "You're so crazy," and I say, "Well, I can't help it. That's just the way I am.
Yeah.
I look at things differently." And so I, you know, because my hair thing, she keeps saying, "Why would you want some hair that people think?" I said, "Because I don't care what anybody else says.
Yeah.
I want what I want. When I look in the mirror, I want to look like I want to look, not how other people want to see me." And so WSFA was like that.
Yeah.
Everybody accepted me for what I am. You know, everybody was like, "Okay, that's just Bill," and that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to be half Harlem and half Harold. I want to be Bill. So everybody treated me like Bill, you know, and so the uniqueness, when you've got something and you know that people allow you to be yourself unabashedly, and they accept every bit of nuance that you bring to the table, that brings me joy, because I don't want to be ostracized at all.
Well, when you bring such immense talent to the table, and just such a genuine, you're just so easy to love, Bill. that
Oh, thank you.
It's easy for people. It's easy for people to accept you because you generally accept everybody else with such an open and genuine spirit that I do think has played such a role in building up the atmosphere and the environment and that family feel that we have.
Bill Ford is the coolest guy I know, from his artistic eye to his pensive personality, and all the ways he works to make his circle stronger and better. He is a vital piece of WSFA's history and success, and that's what makes him real.